Well, thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. Of course, the world is remembering the late Pope Francis. In fact, 250,000 people were at the Vatican this morning to pay their final respects to him. CBS News correspondent Tina Kraus was among those there for the pontiff's funeral.
The solemn funeral mass for Pope Francis drew hundreds of thousands of mourners to Vatican City.
He was a pope among the people.
Francis's simple wooden coffin was placed in St. Peter's Square for the service, close to Catholic leaders and dignitaries, including President Trump. The first reading delivered by journalist Kelsey Gussie from Florida.
A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. Truly, I understand that God shows no partiality.
Last night, people from around the world got one last look at the late pontiff inside St. Peter's Basilica before his face was covered and the coffin sealed. Many of them camped out overnight to pay their respects at the funeral hours later.
He's going to be one that will be remembered for helping those definitely can't help themselves.
Known as the People's Pope, Francis broke with tradition in life and death, choosing not to be buried here at St. Peter's Basilica, but instead at his favorite church in Rome. The pontiff's beloved Pope Mobile carried his coffin to the Basilica of St. Mary Major. The nearly 4-mile procession marked the first time in modern history a pope's body was taken through the heart of the Eternal City.
That is very special because he wants to be around everyone.
The end of one papacy opening the door for another. The Catholic Church now enters 9 days of mourning for Pope Francis before cardinals set a date for the papal conclave to choose their next leader. Tina Kraus, CBS News, the Vatican.
And back here at home, many Catholics attending Mass this morning as well to pay their own respects to Pope Francis. Atlanta News First reporter Blake Devine is at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Buckhead with more.
All week long, we've heard from Catholics and local leaders throughout the metro talking about the impact that Pope Francis had on their life and beliefs. Today at Cathedral of Christ the King in Buckhead, we talked to some parishioners before their Saturday service, and they actually handed out this picture of the Pope for all in attendance, which even included a prayer on the back. This morning, the People's Pope was laid to rest as presidents, princes, and more than 250,000 people paid their respects during a massive funeral inside St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City. The 88-year-old Pope passed away Monday after suffering a stroke. Back here in Buckhead, plenty of people showed up for this Saturday service after waking up bright and early to watch the Pope's funeral on television. We talked to several parishioners who have been surprised by the outpouring of support all week long.
A lot of outpouring of love from the community. A lot of friends of mine that I haven't spoken to in a while, they're like sending me texts like, sorry about the Pope, that aren't even Catholic or other different faiths, and it's kind of touching.
As long as I've lived in Atlanta.
We also caught up with one woman who has attended this church for over 30 years. We asked how she will remember Pope Francis.
He was inclusive, and I think he was not, he didn't condemn people. He gave them a chance, and I think that's, we all need a second chance at some point in our lives.
As for what's next, 9 days of mourning will now begin as cardinals from across the globe will gather in Rome to prepare for the papal conclave, a centuries-old tradition to determine the very next pope. Reporting in Buckhead, Blake Devine, Atlanta News First.
And, one of the many causes that Pope Francis championed was supporting our planet. Atlanta News First reporter Sarah Hammond looks back at his environmental advocacy.
Pope Francis's death came just a day before Earth Day, and during his tenure as head of the Catholic Church, he fought to protect the planet. He urged world leaders to do something about climate change and to clean up the planet for future generations. For Pope Francis, the environment and nature were on the forefront of his mission as head of the Catholic Church. When he stepped into the role in 2013, he chose his papal name after St. Francis of Assisi because of his bond with nature. And that name embodies part of Pope Francis's legacy and his push to clean up the planet.
Accepting the urgency, it seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
Over the years, he advocated for taking action on climate change. He repeatedly raised the problem of human-caused global heating from burning fossil fuels, and he encouraged world leaders to do something about it. During a climate summit in 2021, he said, "We need to ensure that the environment is cleaner, more pure. It needs to be preserved. We must care for nature so that nature may care for us." In 2015, he issued a papal letter proclaiming climate change is a global problem with serious consequences for the poor, and criticized developed countries like the U.S. and China, which have contributed the most pollution.
When it comes to the care of our common home, we are living at a critical moment of history.
Because of his advocacy and urgent pleas, several Catholic climate groups formed in 140 countries, and they've planted trees, organized litter cleanups, and echoed Pope Francis's message. At the Georgia Tech Catholic Center, I'm Sarah Hammond for Atlanta News First.
And, President Donald Trump said on Air Force One just yesterday that another 90-day pause on most tariffs is probably unlikely. But Atlanta News First reporter Abby Casours reports Georgia farmers really hope the president can make a deal quickly to prevent trade relationships from going bad.
The U.S. Poultry and Egg Council is headquartered in Tucker, Georgia, but they have offices all over the world. President Greg Tyler says tariffs pose a threat to their relationships their team has built over decades to improve trade and expand markets.
We want to see those trade disputes go away.
The industry employs more than 88,000 workers in Georgia and generates more than $28 billion each year. 3 out of every 4 counties produce poultry or eggs. Over a quarter of the world's poultry exports leave out of the port of Savannah. China, Canada, and Mexico export the most poultry, most broiler chickens, and chicken byproducts like feet. If tariffs are passed, fewer products will need to be moved, impacting jobs in Georgia and beyond.
Because if we can't export this product, that means the U.S. industry is going to have to scale back on production. They scale back on production, we're going to have losses of jobs across the country.
But negotiations, he says, could help. Georgia's poultry exports to China fell significantly after China imposed a ban following a bird flu outbreak in 2023. They still import cooked poultry products.
Removing some of these non-tariff barriers and free up some of these exports so that we can get back into the Chinese market.
He's hoping for swift compromise. Trade partners could look to other nations to purchase the poultry they would typically buy in the U.S. It's already starting.
Canada, for example, where we are facing retaliatory tariffs, Canada has pulled U.S. products off the shelves, or they're pushing not to buy U.S. products to their consumers.
A 90-day pause on higher tariffs is set to expire in July. On Friday, China announced that they would be rolling back some tariffs on U.S. imports. No mention of poultry. President Donald Trump still maintains the White House is in negotiations with China. In Atlanta, I'm Abby Casours.
And if you haven't done so yet, there is still time to reserve your ticket to the 2025 St. Jude Dream Home Giveaway. You could win that brand new home valued at more than $750,000. Tickets are limited, so if you definitely don't want to miss your chance to win not only the home, but also several other incredible prizes and a chance, of course, to change the lives of kids with cancer or other serious illnesses. Atlanta News First anchor Tracy Hutchins shares how St. Jude Children's Research Hospital takes care of patients and their families.
No parent should ever bury their child. Never.
It is a painful thought for parents with children diagnosed with a potentially fatal illness. When a brain tumor threatened Allison Fletcher's life, her mother Emily found hope hundreds of miles away from their home in Jefferson, Georgia. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis lifted the family's burden.
When they called and he said, okay, I need you to get here, and they had a coordinator call me and said, okay, we're going to put you on this flight. This is where you're going to spend the night. We've got meal vouchers for this. I need you to show up at this store. And they literally hand walked us through every part of St. Jude, especially folks that maybe have, you know, hourly jobs or things like that. They're having to make the decision, do I sit with my child in the hospital or do I quit my job? Because I can't pay my rent and I can't pay my mortgage. And those kind of decisions, St. Jude just comes right in and says, don't worry, we've got all of you. We can help you through this.
Do you think you would have been able to get through it without St. Jude?
I don't think Allison would be alive without St. Jude. So you can get through anything as long as your child's with you. But if you lose your child, it doesn't matter, does it?
One, two, three, dig! It's all hands on deck to break ground and build the 2025 St. Jude Dream Home. It takes a lot of heart to do it too.
The kids are unbelievable, and you know their hearts and dealt a bad card in life. It's great just to see what they can do, and just amazing.
A family never receive a bill when they come to St. Jude.
There's plenty of passion behind the Providence Group of Georgia and their builder partners for a third year in a row. They're making sure all the money raised during the Dream Home giveaway goes directly to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and the children treated there.
Our local trade partners, you know, and subcontractors have donated everything the last 2 years, and they plan on doing this year.
Just the fact that we're doing a small part of it and trying to do above and beyond, just so these families have less and less to worry about with their kids going through what they're going through.
My son was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. He's a survivor. He's doing great. So you always want to get involved with things that touch your heart.
We're able to do it. We're very blessed. North Georgia Brick's been blessed. We want to pass it on to everybody else we can. It's all about the kids, guys. That's what it's all about. It couldn't be happier to do it.
You could not do this without them. This is truly a global effort to combat cancer as well as other childhood diseases, and everyone has joined in on the fight, so we are so appreciative of that.
And if you want to help this incredible cause, help sick kids and their families, and also get your chance to win this beautiful $750,000 home or many other prizes, of course, enter the St. Jude Dream Home giveaway on AtlantaNewsFirst.com or a free mobile news app. We have all the details and you can enter. Thanks so much for being with us. Now back to Local News Live.